Hello, everybody, and welcome to Session 5, Early Literacy Support. I'm Dr. Susan Shapiro. I just wanted to go over the things that we learned this session. So I want to take a minute and start going over it. So the first thing is understanding and teaching text types. So in your classroom, you have a print-rich environment, I'm sure, in a variety of ways that children can learn and work on reading. And one of the things that we have is we have lots of different ways to do that. One are commercial books. So we have little books, which is exactly what it sounds like. Books that small hands can hold. They have very, very short little concepts in them. Basal readers, which are grade level books that are accompanied by a teaching guide that usually have worksheets associated with them, and textbooks that have a specific purpose and are used for instructional materials. I'm not the biggest fan of these because I think that we have amazing children's literature out there that can really grab children's attention and really get them involved in reading. So some of the things that we have is we have poetry, which is wonderful. It starts to teach them rhyming and rhythm of words. We have predictable books. So an example of that would be Brown Bear, where the children know what the next page is going to be. Brown Bear, what do you see? They know they turn the page, it's going to refrain. They love that. They start to really anticipate the rhythm of the language and they start to recognize words. We have nonfiction. So if you have a child in your class who is extremely interested in construction, take out a nonfiction book about construction, cars and trucks, really get children involved. Multi-level chapter books where children feel like they're big readers, where they can take a concept, they take a plot point and it goes throughout the entire book. It's very liberating for a lot of children who have just been reading picture books. And the last is series books, which are also terrific. You fall in love with a character like Amelia Bedelia, and you can see what she's going to be doing in the next book. We have real life texts and other texts. So having them read labels, signs, advertisements, manuals on how to turn on and off a machine, newspapers, magazines. So it's really when you observe what children are interested in, there are many things that you can use for texts to start involving children in reading. Now, once we start getting into the next chapter, what we're really looking about is assessing and teaching concepts. So we're going to start right at the beginning with what is a concept. So a concept is a group of stimuli with common characteristics. Now here you can see dogs. So when a baby sees a dog, how does it know that a beagle is the same kind of dog as a chihuahua? Well, it's being exposed. It's having a lot of experience with understanding what a common characteristic is, that a dog is a dog. Now we want to take this over into understanding what is a print concept. So one of the things that we want to do is children need to understand how a book works. This seems absolutely second nature to us, but to a child it's not. So part of reading a book is starting with a lesson, and here I have it illustrated. Having children understand there's a front cover, there's a back cover, there's a spine of a book, there's an illustrator, an author, a title. And before you begin a book, really bringing them through that. Which way do the words go? Which way does it open? Which way does it close? The more experience that children have holding books and being able to go through books, the more they really understand these print concepts. But it's also something you need to teach in class. Phonological awareness, understanding and teaching this. So what is it? So it is the awareness of spoken language, words and syllables within a word. So understanding that words are broken down, understanding that there is a rhythm to words. And really that moves into phonemic awareness, that words are made up of individual sounds. So we can't start moving into something like phonics unless children understand that there are individual sounds that make up a word. So cat is not purely cat. Cat is k-at, cat. And that takes a little bit of work. Children don't innately know this. This is something that you need to start making them aware of. So how do you teach phonemic awareness? You're going to read books aloud that emphasize language, such as rhyming. You're going to read a big book. Those are the big ones that you hold in front of the class, and you're going to ask children to clap every time they hear a word. They're going to start to hear the rhythm of the sounds. Independent reading, so providing a time for children to read their own books or stories. Now, this doesn't just mean what we discussed before, is finding wonderful texts for your children to read. This also means creating their own books and using those books in the classroom. Modeling children to watch as words are written out on a chart. Saying words slowly to stretch them out, either by syllable or by word. And you can also do that on an experience chart. So if you want to find out, what children were doing this weekend, it's a great time to write it down and pause at some of those words. So an experience chart is one of those big pieces of paper that you see in classrooms, and write down exactly what they say. So they also understand that what they say becomes words, but help them to understand that there are parts of the word as you slowly write it out and expand that word. And independent writing, providing time for children to write sounds, to create words, to communicate an idea to each other. So having something in the writing corner, let's say you're having children building in the block area. I love to use this example. Having children building in the block area, and you don't want someone to knock down the building. That's a great time to have those signs out and letting children say, do not knock down. So they're really getting a chance to sound those words out and start to through them. How do we assess phonological awareness? Well, one of the ways is to sit down and have a child work with you, to have them clap as they hear a word, and have them do that with you. Because they might just be listening to the other kids, but having them do it individually really helps. Counting the syllables in a word, and having them do that with you, and rhyming. The next thing that we want to learn about is letter awareness. So they need to learn the letters of the alphabet. And how do you teach letter awareness? Well, you use their names, and you write their names, and you put their names all over the place, because there's nothing more exciting than seeing your own name. And they start to learn that their name, Susan, starts with the letter S. And I'm going to go around the room and look for that letter S to know where I sit. Where is my chair? Where's my work? Use alphabet books. I've got an example of a happy A here, but there's plenty of, I'm sure you have those in your classroom. Creating alphabet books. And this is something wonderful that children can do as they cut things out of magazines, A's for Apple, and giving them a real print-rich experience where they can start to create those books. Be newspaper detectives. Have them take out the newspaper and find the first letter of their name. Circle it and rip it out. Use objects. If you label your classroom and my name is Susan, then I can walk around the classroom and look for things that begin with the letter S. And the way we assess this is we ask them to point to different letters and tell us what they are. And we do this not in a book where it gives them clues, but in a way that the letters are jumbled and generally have a chance to tell us what they know. Now, we've also gone over understanding, assessing, and teaching writing. So what is writing? Well, writing starts right at the beginning, where a child picks up a crayon and makes a mark on a piece of paper. It begins with scribble, scrabble, with making their mark and realizing that the pen didn't just slide across the paper, that was an intentional act, making a mark on the paper. They then learn through lots of being read to and seeing letters and seeing print that these marks mean something. And we then start to experiment. We start to let them do developmental spelling, where we're not just having them write words as we think is proper. We let them start to experiment and come up with their own way of writing words. So how do we teach? Well, we create a print-rich environment, and I can't stress that enough. Children need to see words everywhere in your classroom. It should be on the tables, on the chairs, on the blocks. Everything should be labeled. Let them create books. Let them tell their own story, and let them use that invented spelling. Give them time to write. Have that writing table out and available for children. And give that writing value. Make sure that that's something that you are doing in a class, that they are encouraged to do, and they have time to move those little hands and start to exercise them. In K through 2, you know, this is the beginning of really developing those pincher muscles. It's hard work, letting them have the time to do it. How do we assess writing? Well, the biggest tool in all of this is observation and one-on-one time. So you really want them to write, and you want to observe. And you want to assess them. You can use Clay Diagnostics, which is a running record. You can use unit assessment techniques. But simply having them write with you is a great way to do this. Understand and assessing story sense. So what is story sense? Understanding there is a structure used to tell stories. So stories don't just happen. There is an introduction, there are characters, there is a beginning, a middle, and an end. There is a plot. So how do you teach it? Well, you have to direct them in thinking. So one of the things that you want to do is you want to prepare the class for new words and thought. Wow, do you think there's going to be a main character in this book? Do you think he's going to get into trouble? You want to start plotting that out. You want to have the children listen to the story, and you might want to incorporate those things in. Do we see a main character in this book? Who do you think that main character is? Did he get into trouble? What kind of trouble did he get into? We also want to sequence with this. We want to make sure that they know that something happens in the beginning that leads to the middle, that leads to the end. Now, one of the problems that we have in this is if you get really talky while you're doing the story, children may lose the thread. So introducing the story, doing it more than once, doing it in a way that really engages them, but they also have time to answer the questions. It's an art form. So I really encourage you to practice it and watch your children. If you have the children, when you keep stopping to tell stories, who are looking up at the sky and you know, messing around with their friends, you want to go back to what we talked about before, which is evaluating what you're doing. Am I doing it in an engaging way? Have I asked too many questions? Have I ruined the natural rhythm of the story? You want to make sure that children are engaged and that these stories don't become boring and they don't become a chore, because you want children to love reading. So you need to foster this while you're doing these lessons. Another is having the children answer questions about the story, which we just discussed, and then have them come up with questions of their own, and they can do that in small groups, or they can have that with you. Now, the end of this, we talked about making sure during all this we talked about assessment. And you should be assessing your children all the time. And that doesn't mean testing them. That means observing them. So you want to have that one-on-one time. You want to be able to observe them so you know when children are struggling. And then you want to be able to create an individualized plan based on the results. So if every time Sally reads her story, she can't pick out the story sense, she can't figure out there's a main character, well, that's something you want to work on. Working with her ahead of time, coming up with who she thinks the main character would be, figuring out what supports we have for that. So the lesson plan should be based on your observation and assessment. So I hope that has helped. I have some YouTube videos also placed that will go a little bit more into detail in some areas that you might need clarification on. And I hope you all enjoyed this week.